like each of you to take one thing home. You take it home just like the athletes. Athletes practice, practice, practice. They have a discipline, and that discipline is focused on basics. These basics, continuous practice, huge discipline, consistency, over time, they become champions. So here tonight, let me first ask the question, are you ready for my Indian accent? It has been distorted by me living in the West, so you should know that. Otherwise, you're all accustomed to Indian accent. I want to take you through basically a few items that for the leadership in the new era, in the new world, I believe are becoming very important. I hope you can read my handwriting because I don't use a PowerPoint to actually relieve you of the PowerPoint equation here. It will be informal. I would like you to participate with me and work with me so that we have something useful to take home. The first item I'd like to take you through is that the runway we are all on is an expanding runway, and I will take you through a couple of things that I'm observing. Item number 2 is what are the requirements of the winners in the new game? At least you will hear a viewpoint from me. And number 3, you may have great strategies, but if they don't execute well, we are not going to be ahead of others. This is a game where the competition is on. So you got to have a good strategy. You also have to have edge in execution. And therefore, if you permit me, I want to take you through a simple framework home. If you wanted copies, they will be delivered to you, because this is something I learned from some very, very successful CEOs who took all that complexity into very simplicity for linking strategy to execution. In that, I will then take you through the key elements of execution, and at the end, then I'll mention to you what are some of the habits that I'm allowed to observe in the world of some very successful leaders who were great in execution. How does that sound to you as the basic agenda? Make sense to the group here? Let me just check a couple of quick things. How many of you heard of Nestle, Nescafe? Raise your hands, please. How many of you, look at this, all the market share right here. Now take a guess, how much of their sales are in Switzerland? Very little. And they have a winning streak around the world as #1 food company in the world, but very little in Switzerland. Breaking the boundaries of imagination. Anybody heard of a company called Novartis? It is a drug company. 1993, it did not exist. It's a merger of two, and today in the market value and going forward is in the top 3 in the world. Switzerland is not a large country. People figuring it out how to break the boundaries, look at the world as a whole. Anybody heard of a company, ABB, Asia Brown Boveri? This is also a merger of a Swedish and Swiss company, headquartered in Switzerland, and there's not much there for them to sell. We need to think through. And here I'm going to suggest to you item number 1, and I hope you practice in your normal leadership job. Item number 1 is looking over the horizon and seeing how this whole world is changing and how this runway continue to expand. So here are some simple things. Unless you simplify, you cannot execute. But the simplification has to be real, it has to be factual, and it cannot be superficial. We have roughly $50 trillion economy. It grows 3% per annum roughly. 1.5 trillion new economy every year. Ask the question, what is our fair share of it? If that fair share of it is very small and you're lagging behind others, we then become marginalized, as you have seen this morning. So the idea here is that practice every month, every quarter, to look at globally, where is this runway of economic growth? How big is it? How it is changing? How it is expanding every day? Because we have roughly 1.5 trillion of new economy every year across the globe. And you know, and I know, that a larger part of that growth is in the southern hemisphere, where we belong. And doing that is spotting the opportunities where you're going to go. So the item number one, look over the horizon, look at the runway, how is it expanding, what is our share of it. So I learned this from a CEO, and he happens to be, in this case, New York. It could be anywhere else. And they, every month, in their executive committee, for execution purposes, every month, they will take the first 15 minutes and ask everybody what changes they are perceiving for the future. So this way, you see this thing from different lenses. Perception is 10,000 IQ points. In the game for the future, we got to be able to see better than others, faster than others, to be able to crystallize what's happening. So I'm going to mention to you 4 forces today are unstoppable. Those 4 forces, there are many more, but those 4 forces that are unstoppable, these 4 forces creating the further runway. And they're all important. It's not one or the other. The first one that everybody knows, but to translate it, is this 1 to 2 billion more people coming into the lower strata of the global economy and from the subsistence level. As these 1 to 2 billion coming in, they are pushing forward for other tiers of the demographics. It is here you see more growth coming in. So here happens to be the CEO of Procter & Gamble. All of you heard of Procter & Gamble, the Tide people and so on. He has announced, as he became last July the new CEO, that in his company, in 5 years, he will have 1 more billion customers to whom that company will serve on a global basis. That's a vision. It is a commitment. It is publicly committed. It will be measured. It will be executed. It will create new ways of managing, new ways of execution, new ways of segmentation, new ways of consumer proposition. New technologies will be developed. If they're going to do it, I believe they will. Will that stimulate other competitors to be able to go? As the companies move forward, have the vision over the horizon, look at those forces coming in. As the companies move, the runway moves. Keep an eye on that. Practice it monthly in your staff meetings and get everybody to see what the changes are. That creates inspiration. That reduces resistance to change. It's inspiring to see people's capacities increasing. So that's force 1. Force 2. In this force 2, I'd like you to note that for the next roughly 10 years, what I see doesn't mean it's right. That in those 10 years, the forces to shift technology from west to east, to shift manufacturing processes from west to east, are going to be continuing. Part of the reason is this unbridled drive for shareholder value. The company is going to go where the opportunity is. And those companies going to be putting those processes, technologies, business models, patents. So in many cases, the inventions might be done in the West, but the manufacturing will be done in the southern hemisphere. So here is another part of bringing 2 billion people more into the economy, and that force will continue to create the runway faster, deeper, bigger on the southern hemisphere of the world.